This analysis is for educational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation. Right now, millions of people use chatbots to write emails or summarize documents, leading pundits to claim the technology has hit a plateau. Inside the top AI labs, however, researchers are preparing for a radically different reality. Leopold Aschenbrenner, a former researcher on OpenAI's superalignment team, recently published a massive document detailing what these insiders see. Over the past year, the technology sector has pivoted. Capital allocation is moving away from consumer chatbots and toward a massive industrial mobilization. To understand the velocity of this shift, we must look at the underlying mathematics. The primary metric for progress is the order of magnitude, or OOM. One OOM represents a tenfold increase in a model's effective computation power. Scaling physical compute by half an OOM requires roughly tripling the number of GPUs. Historically, this has acted as a reliable linear multiplier. Researchers are discovering algorithmic efficiencies at the same rate. When physical scale-up and algorithmic gains compound, the result is an aggressive exponential growth curve. This chart maps that scale-up. Between 2018 and 2023, effective compute grew by 5 orders of magnitude, moving models from preschooler capabilities to outperforming high schoolers. Extrapolating forward projects another 100,000x jump, identifying a 2027 window where models reach the capability of an expert AI researcher. The path to AGI is an industrial expansion, strictly dictated by these straight mathematical lines on a graph. Building infrastructure for that level of compute is creating a logistical shock for companies like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. 2 years ago, a frontier model could be trained for roughly $500 million. Today, hyperscalers are planning clusters that cost tens of billions. Maintaining the current scaling trend indicates individual training clusters will cost over $1 trillion before the end of the decade. While capital is available, the primary constraint on this expansion has shifted from the balance sheet to physical reality. The bottleneck is now electricity. A trillion-dollar cluster requires 100 gigawatts of constant power to operate. This compares stagnant U.S. power generation in blue against projected AI demand in yellow, which climbs at a vertical angle. By 2030, a single cluster could consume 20% of current U.S. electricity production. Companies are now securing dedicated nuclear and natural gas facilities. These facilities consume the electrical footprint of an entire state, functioning as critical national security infrastructure. Because model weights are essentially data files, they are highly vulnerable to foreign espionage. Protecting a trillion-dollar investment requires a complete lockdown of the physical and digital environment. The intersection of energy demands and espionage threats will ultimately transform these massive clusters into air-gapped, military-grade sovereign fortresses. As the hardware layer reaches this scale, the traditional software-as-a-service market faces an era of creative destruction. AI is moving beyond a conversational interface. Compounding compute scale is enabling models to transition into fully autonomous entities. These systems will function as drop-in remote workers. They will take a high-level objective and independently execute long-horizon projects over weeks or months. This autonomy replaces the workflow historically performed by junior and mid-level software engineers. It automates the middle tier of the software stack. This creates a structural vulnerability for companies that have built thin wrappers around existing AI models. Building a business on the assumption that AI capabilities will remain at current levels is a lethal error. As base models scale, these wrapper layers evaporate. The model natively absorbs the functions that previously required a third-party application. In this environment, the only surviving structural advantage for a software business is the possession of proprietary, non-public data. The hardware engine propelling this transition is often viewed through the lens of individual chip sales, but its true structural position is much deeper. There is a common misconception that the primary business is the manufacturing of isolated processing chips. The actual business model is the provisioning of a deeply integrated infrastructural ecosystem. The scale of this deployment is moving from clusters of 100,000 units to architectures utilizing tens of millions. At this volume, value resides in the interconnects, the high-speed networking allowing millions of processors to function as one. Maintaining this data flow requires immense precision and cost. This networking layer makes displacing the incumbent nearly impossible, even matching raw chip performance. This integrated architecture makes the hardware provider the primary toll collector for the transition, as they provision the complete underlying grid. The march toward the 2027 capability threshold is now a matter of physical and capital execution. The timeline for this transition is starkly different from historical norms of industrial growth. The scale of capital expenditure required in the next 6 years has no modern precedent. This creates a core challenge for long-term capital allocation. Our traditional frameworks are designed to measure linear progress. We expect industrial transitions to follow linear timelines, but we are currently facing the violent reality of an exponential curve. This pace of progress is currently reshaping global industry at a rate that institutions are struggling to price in. Fundamental analysis must now adapt to a macroeconomic landscape where technological progress dictates industrial reallocation.